All right, my apologies to everyone who is watching this async. We made a boo-boo. We started the recording a little bit late, so check out the agenda for the first little bit, but then now we're diving into questions. And Adam, go ahead.
Justin, you beat me to it. I was about to ask David to say his whole intro again. So I will say this is super exciting for us. And I'm probably not alone in wondering this to David, but would love your perspective on what do we expect to change as a result of this, mainly with regard with how we work within UX.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I will say the advantage to Boo is there's no record of me complimenting Marcel now. And he was only supposed to hit record. So Marcel, you'll have to keep that close to you in the memory because there's not a digital copy of it. So to directly answer your question, Adam, so I don't expect that things will change directly, especially on some of the day-to-day stuff. However, I do want to say it puts UX in a position of having prioritization. A great example of this, we all didn't do a good job showing this, but like the prioritization table for how we plan has been updated, and usability is right behind security, availability, and data loss. It's before new feature development, and that's a sign that we're saying that the comment I made in the beginning of the recording about our default users change, like that's something we're going to need to then focus on is making sure usability is as part of that in the forefront as we do planning and we take actions. I guess the other thing I wrote just for the recording, if you're not aware of this, we updated the strategy to include enterprise leading usability for the company. It's in the top 3 strategic areas for the company. And so you all have to help your counterparts build empathy for the user, especially our users who are more novice in the space, and making sure we have highly opinionated workflows, better ease of use, better documentation, and the things that are required for someone who's not an expert in DevOps.
Awesome, thanks. Lots of focus on usability and probably some learnability in there too. I have the next question. Sure. So changes like this can be tough for many people, but with that comes some potential opportunities, and was wondering if you knew of any opportunities that might be arising as a result of this organizational change.
Yes, that's a great question. One of the primary opportunities I see with UX joining the product division is bringing UX to the forefront of the company. And what I mean by that is the product division owns the product direction for the company, and usability and UX, whether it's research, tech writing, product design, are now sitting in that same division with product management and product operations and setting that strategy and that vision. And so one of the things that Chris and I actually talked about last week in I'll say our first official one-on-one in the new post-change world, though, so we regularly up until that point, is how do we get UX's stance on usability in the company direction page, not just in the section or the stage level, group level, but actually the first thing people see when they go to the company direction page is about usability being important. And I also learnability too, Adam, though I sometimes lump learnability into usability, but they are definitely two separate things.
Yeah. Thank you. Valerie, you have the next one.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the areas that I think is a great opportunity is making usability improvements at the milestone level. Can you give us your thoughts of how we can do that and better partner with product management?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that jumped to mind when I read your question this morning. The first is, and we've done this now with Grade, I think we're doing it for Secure, but do usability benchmarking and get a sense as to what we actually need to address. That feeds in well to my second point, which is maybe picking a theme for the quarter and then dividing up goals per milestone to achieve it. And in case you're all are not aware, one of our investment themes for this year is improving key workflow usability. And that doesn't have to just be the ones that are highlighted, which are Secure, Create, I think, plan related, but anywhere in the product. Find areas that you can make incremental improvements. And then the last thing is, and this is a change with our cross-functional prioritization, next generation prioritization, whatever the name of the new goals are based on percentages, is make sure UX is included in that. You know, when doing the couple milestone reviews with Eric, I could see occasionally where a designer was like, this needs to get fixed in this milestone, or I need to get this fixed in the next couple. But I was actually surprised there wasn't more of it. And so UX is part of the maintenance percentage, which is a large percentage. Chris and I are going to include UX in the feature percentage as well. So there's a lot of chance to influence where we're going and how we improve the product. And I will give a quote that a former CEO of mine, so not a GitLab, said, but it doesn't matter how many features you have in the product. If it's not usable, no one's going to touch it. And that's what we want to make sure. We're choosing usability first over adding a bunch of new features. In a meeting actually 2 weeks ago, Sid actually shared in his opinion, usability must be nailed before new features are added. His comment was around, and I actually just quoted on an issue, talking about usability actually, but it was essentially like, new functionality can wait. If the thing's not usable, don't add more features to it. And so that's the mindset I want everyone UX to have. And then it goes back to that, keeping everyone accountable for it.
I told you folks, it's a new world. Take advantage of it. I wanted to add a little nuance to this. One of the things that we have seen in the past is when we're doing milestone work, it can be somewhat myopic. So it's like we're working on a page and we're thinking about this little part of the page. But then when you look outside of that part of the page, there are usability bugs. So there's weirdness. It could be something as simple as a misalignment issue, or it could be like, hey, wait, now, like if we just focus on this piece, the workflow of this page is weird. But I think that we've done that because of the previous cultural focus on do the smallest possible thing. And what Valerie and I have been asking our teams to do is to pull up, think a little bigger. So we're not saying blow up the scope of everything, but you know, we can't be quite as myopic as we have been in the past. David, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that. One of the things that I would love to see is a vision for where we want to be when we're complete on a feature. And I mean the complete maturity. And then how do we de-scope back to what that first iteration looks like? So I grabbed the quote that I was looking for. I dropped in the doc. It's usability comes first before functionality. This was a meeting reviewing a new area of focus that we want to invest in. And the comment was the UX issues need to be addressed as part of the MVC, not after the MVC. And then it was cut functionality for usability. Now I think Justin added that was a direct quote. I can't remember which part Sid said of that, which part I said. So let's not attribute that in case I have them in the wrong order. But that is the mindset we're trying to shift to. And that's why in the AMA for R&D last week, Sid called that out, that like we are having usability feedback in the Pay Net Promoter Score. It's actually dropping. And the things being called out are navigation, dashboarding. A comment I made a couple months ago about accordions being different on the same page of the product, like that was called out. And so we're realizing that as an enterprise platform now, we need to be thinking about the users first.
Thank you. Thank you for building on that. Tori.
Yeah, so I was curious what the reception has been from product related to this change and what they would like to see from closer alignment and collaboration with UX.
Yeah, so to state the PM team has been excited is probably an understatement. Christy was in the PM biweekly, and there were a lot of comments in the chat about it. I think what they're most excited about is the ability to work closer together and not it just be like, oh, it's just a counterpart in engineering. The one thing that I shared yesterday is in my skip levels with the PMs, UX was coming up a bunch. And part of that was some PMs don't have a designer counterpart. Some tech writing teams are stretched very thin and can't always get to what they want to get to. And the PMs were like, how do we fix this? Like, I need them, I rely on them. And so that kind of fits into like what we see as alignment then. Tori, is that Chris and I are going to focus on how do we build into the budget to get back to gearing ratios and not have designers cover 3 teams, not have tech writing feel like they're covering the largest stage by themselves, and making sure we're actually putting everyone up for success, whether that's product, being the PM team, the operations team, monetization team, or the UX team.
So when I told y'all yesterday that David has been a great advocate for UX headcount, now you have heard it in his own words. You don't just have to take my word for it. Cool. All right, Susan.
So I'm pretty pleased about this move. And I see benefits for the tech writing team. A couple of them beyond just the gearing ratio focus, which is a big one. But also I think closer collaboration with PMs will help us be more proactive and less reactive. But I'm wondering what benefits that you see, David.
Yeah, so I'd say one of the ones that jumps out, and but I for those who also don't know, it's like Adam and Susan and I talk semi-regularly, though I think it's probably been several months by this point that I've talked to Adam. But one of the things that Susan and I've talked about in our one-on-ones has been the tech docs site as a whole feels like it's an engineering side project and not an actual product of the company. And so one of the benefits I'm seeing is how do we enable that to be an actual part of the product and not feel like it's relegated to, and I'll be blunt, like tech writing needing to just quickly copy edit in hopes that something doesn't get merged with, mistakes in it. And so that's something I would like to see, like Susan and I work on and Christy work on, as well as maybe even start conversations about, we did fund one developer for the site last year. Like, should we actually have a full team? Should we have a product manager that can work with a technical writing lead? How do we make our docs a first-class experience? And I will tell you, like, just give you a little insight in my one-on-ones with Sid, docs comes up a lot because the docs site has some really good components that the team has built, and then there's areas that you all have not been able to focus on, and we find things that contradict, and that's not on tech writing, that's on the company, right? And so I'm hoping we can take this as an opportunity to make that more strategic. And I think, Susan, I represented the stuff we've talked about pretty accurately. Is there anything else you'd want to add to that?
Nope, just letting it soak in.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add is, man, our technical writing team has made some amazing improvements to the docs, not only to the site, but to the content itself with a massive amount of refactoring. But I say massive, I mean, it's massive given the size of the team, but then the amount of content we have in our docs is like, what's a word that's bigger than massive? I don't know. It's
super massive.
Yeah, super massive.
So the content audit just identified 2 million words.
Lord have mercy. Right. So you can see a difference today when you go and look at the doc site. It has better structure, especially in our most used areas. It is easier to read. So, I mean, that's down to the skill of our tech writing team. And it's just, there's only so many hours in the day, right? You can only do what you can do. So I am so super excited to see us enable y'all to do even more of that really great work.
Yeah, and I will say there was a project, I think it was last year, though time is fluid, so maybe it was longer than that, where tech writing partnered with the developers and the PMs in SEC section, and we did a nice restructuring of that, to Christy's point, and that was received very well by our ultimate users. They're the people paying the most to use the product, and they didn't feel like things were cohesive and were able to be followed, and that effort was really great. So I would like to see more of that.
Vitika.
Yeah, my question is much more narrow in scope compared to others, and probably it's too early to ask this, but I would admit that this was the first thought that I got when I heard about the reorg. So I'm just curious about, David, what are your thoughts around how we would continue to participate in shared cares? And in fact, would there be shared cares? Also, like, would we continue to have UX specific KRs?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's too early yet, but next week is actually my leadership team's offsite, and Christy's going to be there, and we're going to be talking about OKRs. The initial thoughts I had were, we've always had the PMs and the product monetization team aligned to the product investment themes. I would love to see UX aligned to those more. The OKRs have a tendency on the engineering side to be more management by objective type OKRs, like you'll complete this training, you'll do this review. Whereas the product ones tend to be a lot more ambitious. And I would love for us to try to align UX's efforts to those. But it is still something we need to figure out, because there are going to be things that UX is doing with other parts of engineering that aren't part of product development. And so we just need to make sure we're acknowledging those too.
Okay. Thanks for answering. Sounds like good news.
Yeah, OKRs, by the way, this fits into Marcel's question about pet peeves. He's asking to use it like a UX one. One of my pet peeves is OKRs. I don't like OKRs that feel like we're giving you tasks that you check off. I'd much rather have OKRs that are ambitious and vision focused. Christy's laughing if you all can't see it, because she's heard me say this in all of the shared R&D OKR planning this year. And so I think we're slowly changing that perception of OKRs here.
Yeah, and Vitika, you're saying maybe you asked too early. David and I had our first post-merge one-on-one on Friday, and one of the first things I said was, "Oh God, can we think about how we're doing?" Okay, I'm right there. Cool. Marcel.
Yeah, I think you might have actually answered that one already in the last question. But I'm wondering if maybe anything else you want to now point out as one of the pet peeves that you would love to have more focus on.
Yeah, so my pet peeves are probably simple things in the grand scheme of things, Marcel, but they're the things that stick with me. I highlighted one that the great team addressed, where we had 3 different ways accordions opened on the merge request. And I was someone who's like, how do I know which one I'm supposed to be using now? Like, when I clicked on one had a down arrow, one had a plus sign, if I remember correctly. And it's like those things are the things that just kind of like go like, how did we get here, right? There's been a couple things too where buttons aren't right, and it just feels like, you know, we've moved fast as an organization, right? And Pajamas is trying to catch up to us, but it's like, why on one screen is there a button that is this color, that is my CYA, and on this other page, it's a different color and it's like square and less ovally looking or whatever. And so it's those things are the things that are, I'd say, my UX pet peeves. And I will state that I don't think that's something UX made a mistake on. I believe UX design has always probably followed design, our design system and our principles, at least since I've been here. And I think it's about the product catching up to that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, David. A lot of this does come down to the Pajamas migration effort, but not all of it. So I'll say some of it, and then other parts are not. What I'm hearing you say, David, and by the way, when I saw this question, I already knew what your answer was going to be, because we talk about this stuff so much. What I'm hearing you say is details matter. They matter to our users. They matter to the credibility of our product. And that's something that a company, we've done a really bad job of in the past. These are the things where when something is going into production and we look at it, we go like, oh, yeah, the accordions are 3 different styles. Well, that's okay, because we'll get it out on time, and we'll fix it later. And then we don't fix it later. What David is saying is, again, this is a new world. Let's advocate for the right things when we see them. And then if you have challenges with advocating for the right things, this is where you got to start pulling in help. You are empowered to do that. All right, Camille.
Yeah, and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, no, I was saying, just to give a real world example for this year for everyone to understand what Christy's saying. I've already rolled back 2 features this year that made it into production or on GitLab.com that I felt the usability was poor on, and we rolled them back and addressed those concerns and then redeployed it to GitLab.com. And so I don't take pride in having to do that. So don't take that away. I'm not like, I don't have a tally board where I'm like, yes, I've done this twice this year, right? But like, we're realizing that that is the thing that needs to happen, because we sometimes get one shot with a customer or a new user, and if we lose them on that, we may never get them back. So that's super important to me that we're doing it right. And I will say one thing UX can do to help with this, and Justin probably still remembers me doing this, Tim, at the last company we worked together, like make sure your designs are right. And what I mean by that is I've actually seen developers here and at former places I've worked make changes to how the UI works based off things shifting in a mock or a visual design. And it's literally like the button shifted down when it was clicked on. It's like, oh, well, maybe that's what I'm supposed to build, right? And that gets into the details matter. Like we don't have to be 100% pixel perfect, but let's make sure what we're showing to them meets it and not assume they'll realize that that was, oh, that's just off accidentally in the design.
Thanks,
So
David.
Camelia, sorry for interjecting that, but over to you.
No, that's great. Camelia, I think you're up next.
Yeah, my question is related with the product maturity. So before when we talk about the MVC borrowing solution, we cut down certain like usability or features that is often involved with the product maturity, like we're in the minimum, like maybe like later on we'll go to variable or lovable, we will consider more usability like stuff. Will this like change will also affect on the maturity kind of description we have and how we're planning to in the future structure this?
Yes, that is the intent. It's actually something Chris and I have been talking about off and on this year about how to improve category maturity scoring and include usability earlier. I think that that's becoming key when we're releasing something new. There used to be, as Christy said, this approach of like ship the smallest thing and it's okay that it's bad usability because we just want to get it out there. We're seeing that fundamental pivot on that because of what I just shared about getting that one chance with a user. I've now been in calls with some of our customers who won't look at Ultimate because they were put Ultimate in front of them 2 years ago when usability was the last thing people were thinking about when they were putting things into Ultimate. And like, we're still like, no, please trust us, it's changed. Like, come back and look at it. And so we're going to have to bring that usability to the forefront, even at the minimal maturity level. Oh,
Yeah, thank you.
Christy, I think you're muted.
Great question.
Yeah.
Austin.
Sorry, is it me now?
Yep,
Cool.
it's your turn.
Yeah. So one of the challenges I feel as a designer is our code base is rather complex and it makes it hard to approach what may seem like straightforward problems to solve. So we could say, come up with a amazing design for a page. The engineering effort realistically is going to probably take the entire year to refactor that page. Or maybe just, 4 or 5 milestones. And I know it says earlier on that we're putting these usability things ahead of feature work. That still feels like a pretty hard sell to product management when it's like, hey, these pages are all coupled together. We need to spend 4 milestones decoupling them so that we can actually improve the performance of the page, or even just like the way that we move things around, because we can't move this light bulb because it's going to turn off another light somewhere else. And we don't want them to have that interaction. And that's been a really hard sell for me, at least. So is there a better way I could approach that with product management?
Yes, that's a great question. And I think there's probably 2 different items to kind of address there. Austin, there's net new feature development and improving existing usability. And I think the improving the existing usability is probably the harder of the 2. I will say the PM has become more acutely aware of why it's important to do that. I've seen teams create, plan, secure, other ones, I'm sure those 3 that pop into my mind, who have purposely delayed a new feature by months to fix the back end, to improve the usability, to then ship the right thing the first time. And so I think it's just going to be a culture shift on that. There's a lot of pressure on the product managers to keep on growing at the rate of growth the product is growing at. And so they're having to make the decision on, like, okay, if I take this delay here, I can still do this thing over here, which will still have that similar impact. The PMs are measured on adoption of the product, just so you're all aware, and directly measured on revenue coming into the company. And so that's why you sometimes see that pressure from them on making a decision that's tough. But it will take time, Austin. I do believe we can shift that mentality. And Marcel, you had an item?
Yeah, it's not so much an item, but I've personally been trying to implement some of the pieces that Jeremy already had played around in the video around sophisticated simplicity that he shared a couple of weeks ago. And it's been incredibly tough to get anything around that done because the underlying code around that is so incredibly complex and used in so many different places. Like, for example, when we try to change the way discussion notes and comments work, we noticed that this code also sometimes shows up in the package registry, or sometimes in like completely different places where nothing of that is expected. And so we have huge dependencies and inconsistencies around these places that make it really tough to untangle that. So I just wanted to share this example in case somebody wants to have a look at how this can play out and what kind of communication with engineering then happens.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, I actually already had this as a topic of discussion on my one-on-one with David on Friday, because I see this problem too. I think in the past, we've done this because of our cultural thing, that was eloquent, but you get what I mean, around the boring solution. And so the boring solution is to use code that's already there and extend it. And we have not thought about the long-term impact of that. And I think you're right, David, in pockets of our product, it has happened. And I think in other pockets, there's just not a deep understanding. I wonder if this is somewhere where if we could give examples, it would really help people to understand. So an example I'll give is the way that we use labels as the basis for everything in our planning product was a really early decision made years and years and years and years ago that makes it incredibly difficult to do anything in plan today. But we've got quite a few examples. So David, maybe this is something you and I could talk about, a digestible way for us to share these examples to get people thinking about the impact of today's decisions on 3-5 years from now and where we want the product to head.
You know, I think that would be a great topic for us to discuss. I think the other thing too is the efforts with the workspace team. They are trying to deduplicate code as part of that. And I think if that is successful, and Labels is a great example, Labels is implemented, I think, 6 times in our code base today. Like if that was implemented once, I think some of those things would become easier. And so I definitely think it's something, to my comment a minute ago, like it's gonna take us time to build that mentality, but also I think people see the value. It's just about how to help them get there themselves.
I personally have also experienced a great example of that with the merge request widgets, because there we had 6 different teams owning one of these merge request widgets. And it was really tough to get consistency. And that was probably what you experienced in these accordions. But also if one team wanted to add a new feature to one of them, none of the other teams would benefit from it. And now that we have all of the merge request widgets under just one core component, we were able to implement tracking so easily. We are so quickly able to make changes to how icons work. And while Jeremy is 100% correct that the implementation of that core component took a really long time, now having it be in the product and now having all of this powered by this one core component is so powerful for us.
Yeah, I will say, Jeremy, like the other thing too is change isn't always easy, to Adam's comment at the beginning. And so I would love for that to have been faster than a year. But we made the change, right? So we did make progress. If I could snap my fingers, we do all the usability stuff in like one milestone, but we don't have enough developers, designers to be able to pull off that in a single milestone.
This is a great question. Thank you, Austin, for bringing that up. Matej?
Yeah, thanks. It's so great to hear so much talk about usability and how to get prioritized more. But we're product designers, not just UX designers. And I wonder, how do we go beyond just prioritizing usability and into a place where product designers are equal to product managers in terms of deciding what we work on, not just how that gets implemented and designed in a way.
Yeah, so I do want to say, like, product designers are equals to PMs, like full stop. They're not, you are not like a sub level below a product manager. I want to stress it because I've actually heard that since we made the announcement. A couple of people said, does this mean I'll finally be an equal to my PM? You are an equal to your PM. The quad is made up of 4 people who are making those decisions, and one of those 4 are product designers. You're right, we're talking a lot about addressing usability. The actions we're taking are making sure designers can prioritize usability issues that go into the milestone. That was part of the change with the cross-functional prioritization. We also changed the way PMs plan and put usability in front of new features. We essentially, if I could have, I would have made it item number 1 in that table, but customers' data loss, security vulnerabilities, and availability have to be before that. Like we could have the best usable product, but if it's offline all the time or like super insecure, like no one's going to use it. So I think those 2 things, let's say, we're going to help make that change. So it's not just talk, but it's actual action that's coming out. And please, like, if you are in a place, and it's not just Primitive, but anyone who feels like they are like somehow a substandard to everyone else in the quad, like, let me know. I will gladly address that. Christy and I do not look at designers that way. All the PMs I talk to don't see designers that way. And so, like, I want to make sure that you do feel like you're contributing and you're being heard.
No, yeah, I agree. And we know that we are equal because there's all these roles are equal. It's just that very often we are so overwhelmed by the amount of work that we need to do, right? That we don't get that opportunity to get on top of it and just be able to say, hey, PM, I think we should work on this milestone, not on that one, right? I think that's quite often the case. I think it actually varies from one team to another. But I do think that it happens possibly quite a lot. I'm not sure how much, but I've experienced both at GitLab.
Yeah, it'd be great to understand, and we don't have to talk about this right now, unless you want to, but like, what were the different situations where, like, in one situation you're saying you did not feel that way, and the other one you do feel that way, so that way we can make sure that it's addressed for everyone and not just you. I think that personally makes me sad to think that, like, if it's you feeling that way because of some reason that could be easily addressed. And I will say too that that's why I stressed at the beginning about trying to get to gearing ratios. As boring as that might sound, I don't know how much of that is because you're now covering 2 teams or 3 teams. I know with growth we had some attrition, and so maybe you're in that situation because of that. But I want to make sure that no one feels like they have to work an incredible amount of hours just to get their normal day job done.
Yeah, that's where I was going to head to, is we've got to work on our gearing ratios, and that'll make a difference to some extent. And then the other thing is, like, a lot of our ideas about what to work on are going to come from user research, right? Whether it's problem validation or solution validation. And so that's where we need to feel confident coming out of our research efforts, and which, by the way, I see this happening a lot. And I'm so pleased with the work that our research team has been doing over this last year. It's been a massive transformation in how we do research at GitLab. So kudos. But then selling that story about, like, this is why this is important. And so if you need assistance with that, let your leaders know. Because this is stuff that David and I are interested in. If you are learning things from users about what they want and need from our product, and you aren't able to get traction on us addressing them, like, let us know so that we can help figure out where that fits into the overall prioritization. Okay, we are at the end of the agenda. I don't know that we have time left for the UX showcase, but that's okay, because frankly, to me, this was so important. We needed to spend the time that we spent together. So that being said, Marcel, as the host of the UX showcase, how would you like to handle this? Because I think we have some different options, one of which would be to just push the schedule out, and what was planned for this showcase, we could do in the next showcase. You tell me.
Let me first of all stop the recording.